What is a credit card? What is a debit card? Because at this stage, they're young, but yet old enough to have a debit card, so you can open one of those children bank accounts. There's many options out there for building your credit or helping them build their credit. One of the things that I believe is very useful is having them as an authorized user on your credit card. Everything that I needed to pay for, I paid in cash.
Right.
So I didn't need to use the credit card. So my process was easy.
I would use the credit to buy my books, and then because I was working part-time, I would pay a few $100s at a time until I had paid off that book. And I was never carrying big balances, but I was using it responsibly because that is how I had see my parents also use credit.
Like a debit card, you have to have the money in there to use it.
Yes.
And in a credit card, you might not, but you still have to explain you have to have the funds to pay it. Hi, welcome to Express Yourself Podcast. I'm your host, Vanessa Martinez.
And I'm Lauren Genuardi, and we're coming today to you with a question from one of our family members. This is a great question that my sister-in-law actually sent in to us and said, how can I help my kids build credit? And I thought that was a great question because that's one of the things I haven't actually thought about or started yet with my boys. So I'm going to pitch this question to Vanessa. How would you handle this?
I think you obviously haven't started just because your boys are still small, or younger, but it's coming soon. Mine are a little older, 13 and 17. And I would say as parents, we definitely always want to be helpful. But in this case, I think it's smart that before we start helping them build the credit, we teach them about it.
Yes.
So we have to really get into the details of what it means, how it affects you, positively or negatively, if that's the wrong way. So I would say having these conversations with kids as they're in high school age, that's perfect time to start, because this is when we were just talking about it, right? Your kids are now saying, oh, Mom, I'm going to go with my friends real quick on a bike ride. But of course, all bike rides lead to the candy store, just dump carrying a Starbucks or something. They're at a store doing something, and that something is spending our money. Yes.
Yes, and they need money.
Yes. So I think it's important to teach them these pieces and walk them through what is a credit card, what is a debit card, because at this stage, they're young, but yet old enough to have a debit card, so you can open one of those children bank accounts. So maybe starting with that. And even though that doesn't build their credit, you're building their credit knowledge. Now, there's many options out there for building your credit or helping them build their credit. One of the things that I believe is very useful is having them as an authorized user on your credit card.
Absolutely.
And this can go both ways, as it did for us.
Yeah.
Which is my parents added me to their credit card, but I didn't use it.
Mm-hmm.
So my name was on there, which meant that my social went on there, and it was reflecting on my credit score as I was not spending, and my parents were doing whatever they needed to do anyway.
Yeah.
And I went abroad for college, and I worked. So everything that I needed to pay for, I paid in cash.
Right.
So I didn't need to use the credit card. So my process was easy, and I totally forgot about it. I totally forgot I was on the credit card. Yeah, that's what actually happened. I forgot.
Right.
But then as soon as I came back to Chicago and started my MBA, I was like, wait, now I need my own card. And when I applied, typically when you apply for a credit card and you're young and you have no credit, you start off with $200, $300.
Yes.
That's the average amount for a young teen. In my case, I started with $3,000.
So that's your hit. You were late to your parents' credit history, yes. Yeah. So it looked like you were doing more than you actually had been.
Yeah. Correct. I was doing nothing. But I think this is, yes, to her point, how can I support?
Yes. And my parents did something similar when I graduated high school. I have a late summer birthday, so I was like the baby, and I was not 18 when I went abroad. And so they put me on their credit cards. And that was the only time that I used it. And I remember calling home, and that was an odd experience because this was in like the late 90s. And it's like you had to go find a phone. There was no like cell phones. Everyone didn't have it. You had to try to find a phone. So you talk to them like once a week. And I remember my mom being like, "Oh, you must be having a good time. Let's look and get your purchases." But that's what they did. So they added me on as that authorized user. That was the only time I ever really used their cards because I was traveling and could not have had my own card. But it really did help build my credit history because it was tracking theirs as well. And then I was able to learn about it. And then when I did enter college, then I did get a card in my own name. And I think at one point my dad opened a credit card. Kind of funny story. No one ever actually got a card. He opened it when I started college. He didn't get a card. I didn't get a card. And like all these years later, I will still randomly get a statement for this account that is apparently still open that was never used and no one had a card. Just kind of an aside. But it was that intro, and my parents had taught me about credit and using it and being responsible. So for me, it was great to have a credit card when I was going through college, not to go out and have a good time and spend money, but I was using it for books. And I always laugh when I look at college projections, and they're like $300 for books for a quarter. And I don't know about where you went to school, but I was spending $1,000 to $2,000 every single quarter for books. Like the books were outrageously expensive. And so that's how I learned to use credit. So I would charge my books, right? You have to have the books at one time. You can't buy the books and get them slowly. So I would use the credit to buy my books. And then because I was working part-time, then that's when I also was learning about interest, because then I would pay a few $100s at a time until I had paid off that book. And I was never carrying big balances, but I was using it responsibly because that is how I had see my parents also use credit to fund a big purchase and to pay it down in chunks, and then it's done and over with.
So I think in the end, that's the most important part, which is knowing how to use a credit card. It's besides it helping you build your credit, it's this teaching phase. So if we're listening, the 3 phases that we're talking about is make sure we teach our children what it is, what it means, and then the difference between a debit card and a credit card.
Yes.
Because a card looks like a card, and we have to think of it as common sense as it is to us maybe, but that's because we've lived for plenty of years. There is a big difference. I mean, completely and not the same, but for them, it's so complicated to understand.
Yes.
Yes. So we need to make sure that we explain the difference and the difference in consequences and what needs to be there. Like a debit card, you have to have the money in there to use it.
Yes.
And in a credit card, you might not, but you still have to explain you have to have the funds to pay it. You just
Still need to pay it. It's not magic money. It doesn't appear out of nowhere. You have to repay it. And kids especially, they've had mom and dad bankrolling their whole life.
Yeah.
And so it's very different to think this money that I'm going to swipe and, oh, wow, this has to come from here. I'm going to see this money come out. It's not this imaginary, oh, mom bought me Roblox, and where does that go? No, like you're going to see the $10 come out of the account. You're going to get a bill for the $200 thing that you charged, and really teaching them and learning about that.
Yep. And the last piece was the authorized user. So if that is something that you're interested in, you can call the back of your credit card, and there are some cards that allow you to add them as early as the age of 13, but it's just dependent on who you're using. So who's your provider, find out, and then make sure you take the steps to talk to your teen before actually either handing them or not handing them the card, but just talking them through what's going on and what it means to them is really important.
Great advice.
I hope that helps. Thank you.